Was her,
I have to think about it a minute.
was it Maureen?
Is it what?
Maureen?
Myrtle's?
Maureen.
Maureen, yes, Maureen.
What did your dad call her?
Call her Maureen.
Really?
Yeah, he did.
And what did you call her?
What did she reply with?
No, what did you call her?
Mom.
Mom.
Mom. Mom. She was a wonderful person. You would have loved her. The two of you were think alike. You know, you had your wonderful feeling of motherhood and all the rest of it. The family, you know, you were very, very, very close to the family.
Was Curtis her first grandchild?
Curtis was always very close to her.
Dad?
What?
Was Curtis her first grandchild?
I'm trying to think.
I'm sure, I bet.
It probably is, yeah. Or probably was, or whatever. Yeah, he was very devoted to his mother. She was, oh, you'd have loved her. You would have absolutely loved her.
What, Curtis's mother or his grandmother?
That was Curtis's mother.
That was Gladys, right?
Yeah.
The way you talk about your mother and Gladys, were they very similar?
Yeah, very much. They got along beautifully. As I recall, they were very lovely, devoted family, and they loved my dad, and my dad loved them. It was, you know, he was a little guy, and he was not, you know.
Was he little in stature or was...
Yeah, little in stature. Yeah. Oh no, as far as the father is concerned, he was a giant. He was a wonderfully, wonderfully devoted family man, and he held us all to a pretty solid, straight behavior. You know.
When you got disciplined, how do you remember how you got disciplined?
Well, I got as a young kid, I probably got spanked a couple of times. Nothing serious. Nothing serious. When I made that trip out west, my buddy, and I rode the railroad.
Bud Parmalee.
Bud Parmalee, yeah.
What did they do?
They let me get by with it, my dad, and...
Did he just kind of shake his head and look?
Yeah, pretty much like that, yeah.
You know, that's kind of like McCrae's father. Apparently, McCrae took his younger brother on a road trip to Washington, D.C. without telling anybody.
By taking him in on his what?
In his car. He took him on a road trip after he got his license.
Oh.
And he thought he could go up and back in a day, but they got kind of lost in Washington.
Yeah.
So he didn't come home until really late at night. And McCrae said all he had to do was look at his father's face. He didn't have to punish him or anything. He just knew he had done wrong.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's a good father when you don't have to do anything other than just kind of look at.
My dad was that way, too. My dad was that way.
You were a softy, Dad.
I was what?
You were a softy on us.
A softy? A softy?
You were towards Nick and I, you were.
You and...
Nick.
Well, you were wonderful kids. That's all I remember.
Yeah.
We had I thought, a very fine relationship.
But you weren't hard on. You
I,
weren't hard and didn't have a heavy hand with us.
no, I didn't. No, I didn't. Because you weren't that bad, or you were all very good kids.
Oh.
I mean, I couldn't be mad at you because you were wonderful kids. I loved my family and I loved my mother.
Oh no.
And you didn't get to know her too well, did you?
I never got to meet her, Dad.
Oh, that's right, that's right. You would have loved her. You would have loved her. And she would have loved you. I mean, it was that wonderful motherly feeling that she had towards her whole family.
Did she put her arms around you and hug you when you...
Oh, yeah, she did a lot of that. She was a wonderful mother. Just a wonderful mother. And so caring and concerned about my dad. You know, when he went for that walk that lasted in 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, when he hadn't had a job for weeks, and he was going door to door trying to sell pictures and stuff and anything, and he just couldn't make it because the depression was awful, just awful. There wasn't anything to do. There was no jobs anywhere, and it was just miserable. My poor dad, you know, did the best he could. And my mother stood by him and took in boarders, you know, to help with any expenses. We took a high school teacher, remember?
Yeah. Did you bunk in with your brothers?
And he was having a tough time, the preacher was, because there wasn't any money to pay him. And they were paying him in IOUs, like a thing.
Oh.
When the education department in the city of Chicago began to make enough money to pay the teachers, they couldn't pay the teachers for the longest time. And we took one of these teachers in because he didn't have any money, and my mother took him in, and he gave her IOUs because he didn't have anything.
Oh,
he was a high school teacher, and they just wasn't any money. And
I wonder if he tutored you boys to pay, maybe to, or helped you with your schoolwork. Maybe that was a way he could help instead of money. You know,
well,
help.
He was a very well, I mean, that high school teacher.
Yeah, maybe
he was a teacher with a great reputation, wonderful guy, very honest, very straightforward, and he just didn't have any money hardly at all.
Oh,
and
wow.
he did what he could for Mom, for our family, because he was living there. He had no place else to live.
Right.
It was unbelievable. It was a terrible depression. And
when did your parents move to Florida? Was your dad working in Florida when
I think he did some work for my cousin we had that he had taught how to be a draftsman, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he had learned from my dad, so it was kind of a reverse thing. And he was giving my dad a break. And but my dad finally got a job on his own back in Minneapolis, and things were back on a square. Things were back in a livable way again, and my mother took in that little young lady, girl, about our ages. She was young. She was about 12, 13 years old, 14, something like that.
And why did she take her in?
How did she take care of her?
No, why did she? Was she an orphan?
No, she was the daughter of the daughter of a woman who was living. She had a boyfriend who was a what do you want to call him?
Mobster? Was he in the mob?
Yeah, she was a mobster's girlfriend. Really, really. It was that way, and my mother took her in. She knew all about her and her background and everything.
But she was a good girl.
And she was, at heart, a good girl, but she was living with this gangster.
Wow.
And of course, she did not want to bring her daughter up under a gangster. So she was looking for a mother.
Oh, I see. It was the child of the girlfriend.
She found my mother working through the church.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And they had this woman that was a good-hearted woman, but she was a girlfriend of a gangster.
Wow.
Because she had to have that for her living, and she was a weak person. I think she kind of liked the guy anyway, and he was supporting her, and she did not want her daughter to be brought up with a...
Did she come visit her daughter a lot?
No, not too much. She didn't want to identify herself as a gangster's wife, and
did the little
girlfriend.
Did the girl miss her mom?
Hmm?
Did the girl miss her mom, or was she happy to be?
I don't know, but I was too young to know the finances. I was a high school kid and didn't know too much about that sort of thing, but she was a good person. She was a good person. Because she wanted her daughter brought up in a decent surroundings.
Was her daughter messed up, or was
the daughter was a gangster's
child?
Girlfriend, and she was a girl.
No, what about the girl's daughter? Was she kind of messed up herself? Or was
the girl's daughter?
Yeah, the 12.
She was young. She was young. She was just like a
12-year-old?
And brought up by my mother, and my mother treated her like her daughter.
Oh, how nice.
And it was wonderful.
How long was she in the house, Dad?
And she found out they did this through the church.
Yeah.
One thing and another. She was a gangster's girlfriend, but a different type, not a
killer.
No, not a...
Probably a bookie or running numbers or something.
Yeah, she wanted a decent mother for her daughter, and that's why.
How long did that girl stay with you? Do you remember?
How long? Oh, maybe
through high school.
7 or 8 years, something like that.
Do you remember her name?
I'd have to think about it for a while because it's been so long ago. But we respected her.
Yeah.
We respected her for what she was. She was very kind and decent and loving of her daughter. And she knew that she was living with a gangster, and it was the wrong kind of a surrounding for her daughter.
Right.
So she was looking for a woman like my mother.
Oh wow!
And
she must have been delighted.
And they hit it off perfectly well.
Did your mom take the little girl to church?
Well, I think they did go to. She went to high school. Went to Sunday school.
Did you go? Did you go to church in high school or no?
We went. I went to church on Sunday. As a boy, a young guy, and my mother was not terribly strict but she wanted us to have the opportunity for having a background of high school, of Sunday school.
Right.
And we did. We had a nice Sunday school.
Was it a Presbyterian church or?
It was a
or a Lutheran or Methodist.
It was a Methodist, I think, something like that. Yeah, yeah,
Protestant.
yeah. Protestant. Oh yeah, it wasn't one of those real strict things.
Yeah.
So my mother was encouraged us to go to the church, and but she was not a devoted to it like a lot of women are. You know.
Yeah.
And anyway, and I remember the girl.
Did your mom play the piano in church?
She played the piano quite often.
I was wondering.
She'd go off in a corner when things were terrible and you know that my dad didn't have a job and one thing and another. She'd go to her seat on the piano and play some beautiful songs that she knew. She was a good piano player.
Did
really
she
good.
play classical music, Dad?
Classical? Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
You never wanted to learn?
No, I know none of us were musically inclined for some reason. We were inclined with football, baseball, and girlfriends and stuff like that. But we had a good childhood. In spite of the fact my dad had lost his job right in the peak of his performance, when the job just evaporated and there wasn't a job anywhere, either in Minneapolis or Chicago. He went back to Minneapolis to get a job in St. Paul. That's when he took a promise to become a Democrat, and he was all mixed up with politics. My dad had to stop belonging to the Republican Church, Republican.
Political group?
He got a job from the Republicans, but he had to drop all relationship with the church because the job he got was through a kind of a work system as a payback for a Democrat, and my dad was a vowed Republican, so he had to pretend to be a
Democrat,
and so he got a job that way, and we had the girl living with us, and the money was helping our family. When I think about it, a gangster's money helping us live. You had to do that. We rented a house, rented a room in our house, and he was a member of our family for a long time. A physics professor in high school.
Oh wow!
A very, very.
Did he teach at your high school?
Very good high school teacher. In our high school, and he didn't have any money. He had money. He had IOUs that the city of Chicago was giving a promise to pay whenever they had money.
Oh my!
They'd pay him back, you know.
So he was grateful to you guys.
He was grateful to us, and we were grateful to him.
And you had a paper route, right? Did you make money? You had a paper route.
I had a paper route, and in Chicago, and had my boyfriend that we went as non-paying visitors to the Chicago World's Fair in the middle of the night, crawling over the city's beautiful library that we could get dropped down inside what was then the Chicago World's Fair, with a big thing in the middle of the Depression. In the middle of the night, we went there. It was my guy that we went to Florida with and all. Went to
Bud Parmalee.
West Coast, yeah, Bud Parmalee. It was a make do type of thing. My dad was being as honest as he could be to us kids, trying to keep us on the right track, because we didn't have any money, and he didn't have any money to give us to work with, and we did the best we could. And but I respected my dad and my mother too. Of course, she was a little more strict.
Was she a good cook?
She was a very, very good cook. She's a homekeeper.
No, cook. Was she a good cook? Food.
Yeah, she cooked food, and she had always was worried about my dad eating enough because he was so thin, and he wouldn't eat as much as he should to build him up a little bit. And my mother was always trying to push food on him, and
he just didn't have a big appetite.
He just had no appetite at all to speak of, and it was his what do you want to call it? It was in his early teenage on the farm when he was a farm boy, and he was the youngest of the crowd of male farm workers, and he did his bit, but he was more of a scholar,
right?
And he did well in school, and his father made allowances for him so he didn't have to do all of the farm work that some of the other boys did in the farm.
Because he enjoyed studying and reading more.
Well, he was my dad was a very top scholar and a very good student. And
where did he go to college?
He went to college at the University of Minnesota.
Oh, wow!
And he graduated.
Wow!
Yeah, he was a top student. So my grandfather, who was my dad's father, made allowances for him because he was a student type.
Was his name William? Your grandfather, William?
Grogan?
No. Was your grandfather's name William? William?
I'm trying to think. Very likely was. He was a good man doing the best he could in the worst depression the country had ever had, of course. And, of course, being on a farm, they were living a good life compared to the life that my poor dad was trying to make as a draftsman.
So you remember your grandfather and grandmother for? They were
very, very vague relationship with the grandfather and the others. Of course, my dad was very, very close to us, always.
But you had grandparents.
Yeah, I had my grandfather. Well, let's see, my dad was the closest to us, of course. Yeah, we knew the grandfather, but he was a typical farmer's grandfather, kind of aloof a little bit, a good guy.
Did you spend summers at the farm?
Oh yeah. Almost every summer that I remember as a boy.
And where was the farm? Was it in Elysian?
Elysian, Minnesota. Yeah. It was a wonderful, wonderful place.
Were there animals?
Animals? All kinds of. It was a regular farm. It was the best farm in that whole area.
Wow.
My grandfather was the leading farmer in that whole area, and he had good connections and one thing and another. And my dad and his brothers and sisters, he had a big family. I think about 8 or 9 kids and boys and girls.
Wow.
And all of them working away on a farm, one thing and another. And they're all decent, and everybody had a good record, and they worked hard.
What did they grow?
They worked hard.
What did they grow? What did they grow in the farm? Was it a
It was everything. They had. It was one of the top farms in the whole area. It was the number one.
Did they have cows?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Lots of cows.
Did you learn how to milk a cow?
I never did. No, I don't think I did. Since I did.
Or did you gather the eggs from the chickens?
I did once. I used to milk the cow.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, I milked the cow. Sure.
That's cool.
And I remember the cow would get a little bit fed up with producing milk, and it would kick the rear field, and he kicked the whole pail of milk that I had been working away to.
Oh, wow.
I remember they spread the whole barn floor.
So maybe they didn't ask you to milk the cow much after that.
I think I got off. Well, we all had to do work on a farm. All had to do work.
How cool, Dad.
Yeah, it was a good life. It was a good life. My dad was very straightforward, and he helped the kids as best he could and get them into a decent high school and all that sort of thing. And
where did your older brother Robert go to school?
He went to the regular high school.
No. Did he go to University of Minnesota too?
Yes, he did. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he was a top student, my older brother. And of course, then when he got in the military during World War II, he became an officer.
Yeah. And didn't he teach at the Air Force Academy?
He might have done
he did.
to the young students coming in.
He was in the Air Force.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, he was an officer. And I've got that picture of him. It was standing up on the side of the whole. This was after the war. My father served with the Air Force during the war.
Your brother.
And then my brother, rather, yeah. And after the war, he continued on with the Air Force.
Right.
A little bit. And he was an officer and had a whole crew of must have been 25 people, crew members of this big bomber plane. And he was the crew chief of that whole thing. And
I think I remember you telling me that Uncle Bob taught at the Air Force Academy.
Well, he may have done that because he was a top student. He's a very, very smart guy and a very good student type and loyal to the cause and one thing and another.
Well, so was Frank.
Highly respected he was. That was it.
So was Frank. You said he was brilliant.
He what?
Your brother Frank. He was brilliant too. Frank.
Yeah, Frank was a good student. Very, very straight student.
And didn't he go to University of Florida?
Yes, he did for a while. Yeah, he did. He was going to the University of Florida when he got stricken.
Which was awful. Your mother.
It just destroyed my poor mother. You know, she was so proud of Frank because he was a young, very brilliant student in school, and then something in here just went in the wrong way, and he...
meningitis, was it?
He what?
Like meningitis, and then meningitis? Did he get brain damage from a brain infection?
No, I don't know what he had along with him. It was something to do with his mental problems. He was a brilliant student, but he was one of these that was on the edge, you know. He just couldn't quite put the pieces together. But he was a brilliant student. But
how long when did he die?
Oh, he took ill in his high school years.
No, college, because he went to college, you said, in Florida. Didn't he?
Was going, let's see, was he going to college or was he going?
You said he was
in college he was going, that's right.
In Gainesville.
He did go into college in Florida, that's right. And then he began to falter a little bit, and That's when he couldn't quite make the. He was a brilliant student,
Did
but
he
he
did he
just didn't.
recover?
He just didn't have them.
Where did he go after that, Dad?
Oh, I don't know, Caroline. We tried to get. My mother tried to get a job for him to go door to door and try to help because nobody had any money anyway. And
Did he move back home?
did he what?
Did he move back to home?
Oh yes, when he couldn't make the grade in in
College.
university,
Yeah.
in the college, he had to leave and go back to. But he was a brilliant student.
I know.
But he just couldn't put the pieces together. He was a brilliant student and a wonderful, wonderful young guy. He reminds me so much of our own, one of our own high school.
Griffin?
Yeah, I think he would be pretty much like Griffin, and very, very devoted student. And then, but he just couldn't put the pieces together, and he couldn't make the grade, and it was a sad thing because he was a smart, very smart kid.
Did you see him much after that happened?
Did I what?
Did you see him much after that happened?
Oh yeah, we'd go to the one of the saddest part of my childhood was going to the place where they had the state of Minnesota had
Was it Florida, you said?
yeah, Florida.
Florida, yeah.
And he went to a sort of a learning place, and he was a brilliant mind and the whole thing.
Right.
He could make homemade electrical machines. He would make all sorts of things. He was extremely intelligent.
But he had to live somewhere like a group home?
No, he lived in a home for a long time, and then when he went to school, he was barely getting by because he was far more intelligent than the teacher was. He was a very smart kid, but he just couldn't put the pieces together, Carol, and it was a very, very hard blow for my mother to take because she'd been a good student and my dad too, and they both worked hard with him.
So you said you went to see him.
Oh yes, I did. I went down to the down to the state of Minnesota.
Florida.
Florida had a place for people with mental problems, and he was a member of the crowd that they had. My mom and dad sent him there, hoping that that
they could help him.
It would help him, yeah, and it did to a degree, but he couldn't make the grade.
So what happened when you went to see him?
Well, he loved to see us, he was sort of half with it and half not with it.
They might have medicated him, Dad.
Yeah, probably.
Oh.
It was sad. It's sad for my mother because he was a brilliant student. Here's the point.
Yeah.
That's the point. He was a terrific student, but he just couldn't pass the grade for something in the mental problem.
Did he get depressed, Dad?
Did he what?
Did he get really depressed?
No, on the contrary, he would he was living in a kind of a
in a false world?
Yeah, working in a kind of a make-believe life because he was a brilliant student.
Yeah.
He was very smart.
So, but when he lost his foot, lost ground, did he wasn't depressed, he was more kind of falsely elated, kind of crazy that way?
That's it exactly, Caroline.
Oh, man.
But he was a good student and a wonderful person to get to know, but he just didn't have all the wheels that were there.
Yeah.
But he was a brilliant student.
How long did he last at the University of Florida? Was it a year or not even?
About a year. maybe 2 years. I don't know, a year and a half.
What did he die of, and how old was he?
He died in the institution they had for people with mental problems, and
how old was he? Do you remember? How old were you when
he was probably about 17?
No.
17 or 18, and he was a brilliant student.
Dad.
There's the whole.
Dad, you said that he had gone to college, so he had to be over 18 or 19. And he lived a few years, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure he did.
So he probably was in his 20s or 30s, wasn't he?
No, not 30s. No.
No?
No, 20s.
You were married to Gladys when it happened?
No, he wasn't married to anybody.
No, you were.
Yeah, I think I was, yeah. And Gladys was very, very helpful and very,
yeah,
in every way she could. And everybody loved Frank. A wonderful, wonderful young guy. He was just had a good sense of humor.
Aww.
He was a brilliant, brilliant student, but he just didn't have the pieces to put together.
That's a shame.
And my dad and mother, of course, did everything they could in the world for him. And he was a brilliant student. He built his own, in the basement, he built his own, what do you call these machines? A machine that works itself.
A motor?
What?
A motor or a motor? Did he make a
Yeah, something like that. He did his own building of this machine. It was a
Was he socially okay too, or was he kind of a nerd?
Did he what?
Was he socially kind of funny? He had trouble.
He had a good sense of humor. Very good sense of humor.
Really? People liked him at school?
They loved him.
Oh, okay.
Loved him. My mother, of course, was just,
Oh, I can't imagine.
It just broke her up.
I can't imagine, Dad.
It just broke her up.
And I bet she used to go see him all the time, didn't she?
Yeah, we went down to Florida.
Your mom.
He lived in a big place. There was a whole lot of people there that couldn't make the grade, and would live there, and they treated him as well as they could, but he just could not put the pieces together. I don't know what it was, but it's a mental problem. Some people have them. Let's face it.
I know, Dad.
They're born with it, you know.
I know.
But he was smart and in school and everything else, but he just couldn't make the grade, and for some reason, and it was a tough blow for my mother to take. And my dad, of course, being physically very frail almost, and having to work and get a job wherever he could, going from door to door selling pictures, and that was when he was in the depths of the Depression in Chicago.
Well, but when Frank was what, 2 years younger than you?
Yeah.
So he was born in...
We were 2 years apart, yeah.
So he was born in 1919. So when was the Depression? In the 30s?
It was in the 30s and the late 20s. Late 20s and the 30s.
So he was 10, 15. So he got stricken when he was in college down in Florida. So that must have been after the Depression.
Yeah.
So your parents...
No. The Depression was on.
Oh, wow.
Big time. No, the Depression lasted for many years down there. And in fact, all over the country.
Did the war, getting involved in the war, help to relieve the Depression?
It probably did. Yeah, it probably
industry, did. Everybody was put to work. Weren't they?
Well, they still had to have a good mental thing to get into the military. That was He could not let a guy
No,
go into
no,
the
I
military
didn't
if he
know.
was unsure of himself. But no, he was a smart, very smart, brilliant in certain areas, but he just couldn't put the pieces together. It just happened. My older brother, by contrast, both had a brilliant mind and a brilliant
Body,
and was a top member of the U.S. Air Force. And had control of one of the leading bomber crews, and
wow.
and became a real top guy. But he had a little bit of a mental problem toward the end there, I think, because he was smarter than most of the people in the Air Force that he was with. And he was the commander of a whole battle.
I think I only met your brother, Uncle Bob, one time. I think he came out to Katona and visited.
That's a possibility.
One time.
One time, yeah. Oh, he was my mother was very proud of him because he would get top grades in university. He was a brilliant mind, but some of the wheels weren't working quite right, but he still made the grade and was in university and made the grade there.
Right.
And was doing very well.
Did your mom go to college?
Yes, she did. She met my dad in the university.
Wow.
They met each other in the university. My mother was, I think, a music student was her main thing, and my dad, of course, was a
civil engineer.
Civil engineer, right?
Did she ever teach music when she got out of college?
I think she may have. She did on a private basis. I think she had some students.
Yeah.
And
just like Curtis's wife.
Like Curtis's
yeah.
Mother, yeah. Much the same.
Well, like Curtis's wife, Lee, she teaches.
Yeah,
has
that's
taught
right.
for years and years.
Very much the same thing.
Yeah.
And she's a good woman, too. I like her very much. She's a wonderful woman, I think. Very good student. She had lacked the human side that my mother had. My mother loved people, and they loved her back. She was a wonderfully
warm
woman to be associated with young students and others. You're just a wonderful person, Carol. You'd have fallen for her like nothing. I mean, as I remember, even as young as I was, brought up by a woman, and a wonderful woman like that, and you get used to it, you expect it. But realizing later on, as I got older, how brilliant she was,
mm-hmm.
I was more than overcome by her. And it just tore me apart when she died. And she got that disease she picked up by having lunch with a university student that she knew for years before. And there was a couple of former students at the Minnesota. They went to have lunch down in Florida when we were living in Florida.